Okay, I'm Aurangzeb. I'm working as Chief of the Environment Section and Planning Commission, and as well as NPD for National Impact Assessment Program, which is funded by Dutch and mainly aims to strengthen IAIA and introduce SEA in Pakistan. Presentation flow, I will introduce people about Pakistan and the Planning Commission, key players, key functions of Planning Commission, and the plans. Those are very generic things, but last 2-3 slides will be more interesting to you because that will be requesting your feedback. You know, Pakistan, it's about 796 square kilometers, 174 million population, 4 provinces, 4 territories, 7 tribal areas. The Planning Commission of Pakistan is the government's executive federal department institution that is managing the economy of Pakistan in tandem with the Ministry of Finance. As a matter of fact, it does come under the overall Ministry of Finance, the Economic Affairs Divisions and the Planning Commission and Finance. Prime Minister is the chairman of the Planning Commission, and for practical purposes, it is headed by the deputy chairman. Either he is a bureaucrat or politically appointed, but that makes the short. This Planning Commission's overall structure headed by deputy chairman, but is it pointed?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's
Up on the top.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the key person, deputy chairman here, and it has under it secretary coordinating and several members on chief economists as well, and members of food and agriculture infrastructure, and the environment does come under this member infrastructure. Infrastructure deals with most of the infrastructure in the country, so that's why it's embedded, integrated into that wings to make environment more integrated into the process. So the main functions of Planning Commission is to have a national plan and review its implementation. It plans annual development plans, monitors and evaluates the programs, and balances out where the more input is required, and also continuously monitors, evaluates the economic situation. So it has a big job to do. It makes 1-year plans, 5-year plans, long-term plans as well, and even the visions. For example, currently we are working on the Vision 2030 that was made in 2007. The planning process within the Planning Commission is that we have sections for each sector, like on agriculture, like on environment, on roads, on water resources, etc. So all those sections, they plan for their sectors, and then it is coordinated through a plan coordination sections, and then the plan is formulated and finalized with the input. And each section, when it makes a plan, it involves the key stakeholders from the federal government and from the provincial governments, from the civil society, from the academia, institutions. So they work through different groups. Plan is approved, shared in implementation, and then based on this plan, the projects are formulated, which are approved through different processes. Approval process, identification is done by the federal ministries as well, the provincial departments. Donors will also come into that. They will have some suggestions which sector needs what kind of input. And then the approval process is very important. We have a very set pattern of appraising the project, evaluating it, getting the integrated views from different sections like environment section, poverty section, gender section, economic appraisal section. So all those views are incorporated in the planning and approval. And we have different levels of approving of the project. At the district level, then at the provincial level, then at each ministerial level, then at the federal level, that's called central government party. this is central government party, the most important level of approval of the process. This academic is most at the strategic level, and it mostly will say the Prime Minister. Now, we have launched our National Impact Assessment Program with the help of Netherlands assistance, and it focuses on sustainable development, as I mentioned earlier, to strengthen the IAIA process and then initiating the SEA. And we are fortunate to have a Netherlands Commission for Environmental Assessment as a technical partner. The outcomes include implementation of IAIA and introduction of SEA, then understanding and capacity building of on both of these things, and then program management through pilot approach. We are conducting SEA study. It is just started 3 months back. So it will map the existing development planning process. It will assess the present capacity of relevant agencies, identify the government agencies, departments that relate to strategic assessment, and then identify policy plans and programs for pilot SEA. Because under this program, we intend to conduct SEA for at least two SEAs. And based on those pilot SEAs, the recommendation will be made how to initiate or how to legalize the SEA process in Pakistan. And the discussion since yesterday, I think that's going to help us to know how to move forward, whether to move forward or not. We have also established a task force which will facilitate the carrying out of all this program, particularly the study and then awareness raising and ownership by the federal government, by different stakeholders. That involves the federal and provincial key stakeholders into the task force too. I think this is one of the main slides which I want to focus on, is the challenges for SEA in Pakistan. And I think the number of challenges will increase or get more confused after this conference is finished, and some of the discussions are the conclusions if they are taken back home. But currently, even the IAIA system is not well enforced in Pakistan. So there's one thinking that if you don't have a very good IAIA regime in the country, would it be feasible or beneficial to go for SEA? So that's one point of debate. Or it's other way around. If we have had the SEA in place, then might be we would have been much better in the implementation of IAIA. That's one issue. But more important is the lack of understanding of strategic assessment at the policy level, the decision-making level, and the general relevant stakeholders, Ministry of Environment, Planning Commission inclusive, and other NGOs and civil society who are environmental organizations, but capacity is very limited for SEA. And then as the generic problem of lack of coordination and public awareness. Although the things are improving, and they have improved much improved over the last 10-15 years with respect to environmental awareness, but still we are not at that level where you have a demand, it's a requirement from the public to whatever the legal option you have, to implement those strictly. So that we are working on too. And we don't have enough professionals in the country available who can steer the SEA program and help us in the shortest possible time. So we have to always look outside for good guidance. And then the priority, because I'm sitting in the planning commission, that is the best place, I think, for integrating integration of environment or strategic assessment into the national planning process. But for that, you have to make them understand or make them realize what is the priority for environment, what is the priority for strategic assessment for your day-to-day life, for your economic well-being. We are fortunate to make some progress into that context. We have integrated the environment, sustainable development, and even the climate change resilient efforts into our new growth strategy. But still there's a long way to go. Looking around, listening to people since yesterday, even from Puebla, I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from around the world. I think this is one of the best opportunity for me and for my country to incorporate the lessons or the experiences being shared by people like you who have vast experience of dealing with environment and strategic assessment, to how to not to make mistakes, but at the same time how to convince our policymakers, decision makers, that it's crucial for the economic growth. I think we conducted one strategic assessment with the help of World Bank, and it identified that we have this percent loss in the national exchequer because of environmental degradation. That was 1 billion rupees per day. So that did wonders for policymakers and decision makers. So that kind of things are very important when you translate your environmental degradation or lack of strategic assessment into your policies and programs in terms of financial losses. That helps bringing the awareness among the policymakers, and then understanding, and then after understanding, accepting it and doing something. So we are at this stage. I just want to share with you.
Well, in fact, I had to change my presentation because initially we were to present me and one Jose Roncoso, who is the head of the unit, SEA unit at the Environmental Ministry in Chile, to be here. At the very last moment, he couldn't come. In fact, he was a proposal to do the presentation, and I wanted to assume this responsibility because he is the head of the unit. Anyhow, I can very briefly tell you that the SCA was adopted in law in Chile very recently, 1.5 years ago. And instead of talking Chile, I am going to about Colombia. That's my international experience of SCA, and it's a very interesting case. I mean, it was fit quite with the purpose of this session. But anyhow, very quickly about Chile, and I am head of a mission, a European mission, helping the national authorities to introduce the SCA, to prepare guidelines, and we are doing case studies and so on. It's very interesting exercise. What is particularly interesting in Chile that the law included policies in the SCA. So this will be one of the few countries in the world that will do SCA of policies. Well, okay, having said that, I wanted to use the opportunity to present quickly an experience we have had in Colombia through several years, and not only us, but it's a kind of innovative application of SCA in Colombia, which would be very interesting. Well, basic rationale of this application, comparisons with standard SCAs, and one example if I have time. In Colombia, very intuitively, SCA is seen as a tool to deal with what we call sectoral environmental conflict, critical environmental conflict, not just as a tool to assess a formal plan or program, but to use it as a soul or give some insight into a critical sustainability sectoral problem. Let's say we have a fish depletion in an area because of fish industry. There's no plan, nothing, and they say, well, okay, let's do an SCA of this problem. Or this other case, increasing environmental effect of mining activities in a specific regions. There's no plan, there's nothing, and they'll say, well, okay, let's do an SCA of this situation. So they do SEA an environmental critical situation. That's very interesting because the environmental ministry saw that the SEA could be a tool to deal with this policy problem they have. So then SEA is seen rather than a policy design tool than as a pure assessment. And the purpose of SEA is to find a solution to the environmental critical sectoral situation from a strategic perspective. That's what's very interesting because they see SEA have to produce solutions. This is a policy design tool, but with a high-level strategic vision, not from an environmental law perspective. It's strategic in two senses. This is a high-level solution, yeah, in the way high-level policy intervention, and it's accompanied with a structural understanding of the critical issue. They don't care much about how much tons of each or that, but they try to identify which are the structural pattern behind this problem. What is really important? Are the instruments we are using? Are we lacking planning? What is behind? Is the general behavior of the sector, private sector, in this situation? What is happening from a very strategic perspective? And therefore, they try to use a new analytical method to identify this. One is very interesting. For instance, there's some of the examples I can tell you. That's SEA of the mining activities in a huge area, the Sabana Park at Bogota, the surrounding area of Bogota, which is a very rich environmental area, and from an ecological point of view, there are a lot of mining activities becoming more important because of the demanding of mineral for Bogota constructing activities. The SEA of fuel policy in Colombia, the SEA of water policy, the SEA of the tourist development in one island, for instance. If I have time, I can show you a little bit. The SEA of the national hydrocarbon plants, that was a plan, but in fact wasn't any plan. Was more the problem of the increasing the increase of the hydrocarbon activities in Colombia, and the SEA of biofuels. They are incentivizing biofuel production. There's a lot of environmental issues behind, so let's do an SEA of this policy situation. What is the basic difference? You have here, this is an example took from the Bacon methodology for transport, SEA of transport in the European Union. That's a standard SEA. So you have on the one side the strategic decision making, on that you have the SEA process, on this the idea of a decision process, an evaluation, and an interaction. That's the SEA idea. In this case, we have another situation. We have a critical sector environmental policy situation. We have a participative approach plus institutional evaluation of this policy situation. So they saw the SEA, we have to put the stakeholder together, but under a fixed processes of analysis in which we analyze the policy situation from a strategic perspective in order to produce recommendations. In fact, you produce a kind of policy recommendation about the situation. And that's what they call SEA in this case. If you want, is after any of these SEAs, what comes out is like the environmental sectoral policy. Yeah? If you do the SEA of the water use in Colombia, there is no plan behind. What comes out is the environmental water policy. What is it? How do you see from the water issue in Colombia from an environmental perspective? That's the sectoral policy, environmental sectoral policy, if you want. They understand it as an institutionalized process. It's not just an analysis. Institutions agree on some procedure to do that. It's participation, it's high level, high policy level. In most of those cases, the leading role has been taken by the environmental authority. It's the environmental authority which is interested in this critical environmental issue. Let's say the tourist development in one island, which is chaotic increasing, the tourist activity, and they care about that. And they go to the tourist ministry and say, well, okay, we are seeing here a problem, let's do an ACA. It's consensus based with sectoral authorities, and it's based on a strategic environmental analysis, and it's basically an evaluation for action, so to take actions. What are the advantages and disadvantages one can see is introduce a strategic environmental assessment beyond formal decisions process, which is interesting because the problem in many developing countries, not just developing countries, is there are critical situations where there is no plan, but the critical situation is there. So it's an opportunity to use this tool to address this situation which has no decision, formal decision behind. Increasing mining activities in some area, but there's no mining plan. So you have no room to introduce environmental consideration to deal with this problem. Then this is a very interesting approach. Then it's a tool for policy integration. It's a very interesting tool for that. It's an opportunity to force sectoral authorities to assume this critical environmental situation, of course. Then. It's very interesting because it helps to generate a strategic environmental sectoral discourse. Because what happened before this SEA take place, that the sector are confronted, and the sectoral representative, I mean the mining sector and the mining companies, they have a very reactive environmental discourse. They want to not to see everything because they don't know what to do. They have no environmental discourse. And how after this, they assume the environmental issues with their own views, but they assume, they start to have a discourse on the environmental problem they have, because they have a solution. I have no discourse when I only have a problem. When I have a problem, I can propose a solution which is founded, then I have discourse. I have a public discourse. And that's very interesting because this generates a very important dynamic within the sectors. At this moment, it's a lack of regulation. I would say because of that, the process is not followed properly sometimes. Some of the results are not institutionalized, and the framework and the compromises. Now, Colombia is starting to discuss about how they can put this in norms, in an ACA norm, which would obviously include not only this approach, but the formal one, the ACA of plans and programs, but probably also this new and very interesting SCA approach. I have 3 minutes. Well, result in most cases meaningful recommendation. What is interesting is you reach a high degree of consensus because it's very it's on a very voluntary basis. So you press nobody to be there. So once you achieve that the ministry, sectoral ministry is within, and the private sector is in general, you are forced to reach some kind of consensus. In various cases, we have a very practical effects. I mean, they take decision, real decision after that. And what I said previously, in all cases, you generate a strategic vision and discourse of complex environmental sector project. And that's really very interesting. You have to deal with. Well, okay, that is in 2 minutes. That is one of the cases. Is the problem was the chaotic increase of tourist activity in an island close to Cartagena. Cartagena de India is a very tourist area in Colombia, in a very high rich ecological area, which is surrounded by marine national park. Well, this was the critical issue. In fact, we do the SCA, but the objective of the SCA was to produce a sustainable tourist model. You see, this is interesting. And identify current capacity and propose recommendation. We did it, and we produced the model. There was all institutions, and then the kind of recommendation, that's what I would like to show you.
Yes.
That's here, basically. At the end, what we have is a sustainable development policy for the islands at all, as in general, a sustainable development agency in a whole territorial and tourist development for the island. That's the result of this exercise. Thank you.